The Ruwaka, he didn't obviously perform. I obviously think something went wrong with him. I'm not sure what happened to him, but he was quite disappointing. I know he was off top weight, um, and that would have been a big ask for him to do.
Will I give you a Pathé impression of the steward's report?
Yeah, I think he damaged his four.
His right four, yeah.
Yeah.
Regarding the poor form shown, the gelding was carrying top weight in his first run of the season. Vet examined the gelding post-race and found the gelding was struck into on his right fore and lame on his right fore.
Yeah.
If only they could have known beforehand that he would be carrying top weight in a handicap.
Yeah, that was it was odd placing now, to be honest, but
I don't think you can use it as an excuse for how the horses run when you were well aware of what you're asking him to do before the race. I think, to be honest with him, it's more of a case of trying to step back from a horse that clearly needed every inch of 3 miles as a novice into a high level 2.5 mile handicap. I know he was up there with them for most of the way, but I think he just got too lit up and just essentially just went quicker than he was capable of going for longer than he was capable of doing it. He's a 3 miler, and I think he's gone with them because he's fresh and he's ready to go, and he's obviously a keen going horse anyway, but he's just done too much.
Yeah, probably wasn't an ideal starting point for him, maybe.
Oh, it was a disaster. I mean, he has an excuse. I do love that line, though. If only they'd known he was going to be carrying top weight in a handicap. Look, this worked perfectly. It worked perfectly for Imperial Commander. He went on to win a Ryanair. It was okay for long run. He got beaten in it and then went on to win the King George that season. It's just weird that this is the race you're going to start him out in. And I'm not saying anything. I'm not taking anything away from that horse, but he's not a Gold Cup horse. If you're not starting him off, if you really think you can win the Gold Cup, if you really think that form beating Jerry Colomb is real, and that it wasn't that he was given a magnificent ride by Sam Tristan-Davies, who knew every blade of grass and covered every inch and saved ground the whole way through and gave him the perfect tempo ride to be able to go and beat a horse that maybe wasn't given the best of rides on that day. And I'm not bashing Jordan at all. He's a very, very good jockey, but I still can't understand how the hell Jerry Colomb got beaten there. This fella's going to end up in the Ryanair. He's not going for a Gold Cup.
No. He might be a 3 miler sort of on flat tracks. Like say, he might end up being in time a King George horse, but I can't see him ever being a Gold Cup horse.
No, I'd have to agree with that.
But we're not going to bash him while he's down because he could very much bounce back and bite all of us on the ass. So we'll see.
Is that injury significant? Is he going to be out for time?
They said he came back in lame. They haven't said it. They haven't come out and said if he'd be out for any length of time or not. But it wasn't just he had a cut. He definitely came back in lame as well.
Okay. So
I mean, he has an excuse for the run, and he can be better the next day. But color me skeptical. I still don't think that you have to have the horse to go and win. But I think it was just an exceptional ride from Sam Tristan-Davies.
And the thing is, I think
this run doesn't count, but it's not the ideal starting point for him.
I think when they say a horse comes back in with a cut, there's also like sort of thing, these sort of front running, bold jumping sort of horses like the Real Whacker will quite often come in with what we call speedy cuts anyway, where they sort of it's different to an overreach. An overreach is where they catch the front of the back of their heel with their back foot. A speedy cut is when the back foot actually overextends the front foot around the outside. They cut down the side of their fetlock.
Oh, okay.
So, like a horse like him, just watching the way he jumps, I'd say he probably comes back in with cuts most times he runs. So but that obviously doesn't explain the lameness. But we've got to be careful quite how much we read into the post-race excuses. As with any horse, it's nothing to do with Patrick Neville or this horse in particular. You've just got to take it all with a pinch of salt sometimes. Because I wasn't surprised to see him pull up, personally. That was the way I read how the race was going to go for him.
Yeah, not with the way the race was panning out early on anyway.
Yeah.
Like I think this is a huge performance from Stage Star. I think there's obvious excuses for the real whacker, but the two of them have laid up with each other, and he's burned him off.
Yeah.
And just gone and gone and gone, and makes that horrendous mistake at the last. Dusts himself off and goes, not a bother. As Not Long Till May, who's race fit, is coming at him. And almost
I think it's nice for him. It's nice for him as well, because a lot of people accused him of stealing the turners. Like, do you know what I mean? He got accused of sort of nicking the turners. There was no nicking of this race. He did it the hard way from the front, fended off every horse that came to him, and made a mockery of his mark, really, didn't he? He basically managed to stop after the last and go again and still win. Like, he sort of stopped, made himself a cup of tea, and then went, "Oh, right, okay, we'll go again."
It's hugely impressive. So the question for both of you is, can he win the Ryanair Chase in 2024? Katie?
I think it's a possibility. He's Cheltenham Festival. He obviously likes Cheltenham. He's won there again. He'd be on the shortlist, definitely. Yeah.
George?
So he's a horse I've been against fairly regularly in his career. Much like Jonbon, I'm sort of having to accept that he's probably the clubhouse favourite at the minute. As much as I love Envoy Allen, I think Envoy Allen's, for a Ryanair winner, his wheelhouse is probably closer to 3 miles than 2.5 miles. It probably lies somewhere in the middle. Whereas this horse is an out and out 2.5 miler. I think he might just have touch of he might just have 2 young legs for Envoy Allen.
I noticed that Allaho didn't get any love from George Gorman there whatsoever. So take that, Allaho. You're forgotten about. George has moved on from you. Doesn't care.
I think if Envoy Allen gets the Ryanair, Allaho doesn't run there. I think they won't run them against each other, and Envoy Allen's not going to run the Gold Cup.
What do you think?
I think there's a chance.
You're not you're factoring in something that makes sense in the sense that you're talking about Cheveley Park splitting their horses up, but you're completely forgetting about one crucial factor: Willie Mullins.
Yeah.
Willie Mullins doesn't have anything else unless Saint Roy is able to emerge from the pack as a serious Ryanair contender, which is possible. That could happen.
He's a great one winner.
Don't hear Kate roaring and shouting in the background going, "Yes, Emmett, you're right. Saint Roy absolutely is going to be that." So let's just for now say maybe. Aside from him, he doesn't have anything for the Ryanair. And it's kind of weird that Willie Mullins has all this firepower, and yet it all hinges on Galopin Des Champs for the Gold Cup, because Statler's not good enough. And it all hinges on Allaho for the Ryanair, because nothing else he has is good enough. So I just think there's no way Willie Mullins. This is such a weird thing to say about people pay him and should be telling him what they want to do. But if he tells the Thompsons and Cheveley Park, "No, we're going for the Ryanair," and that's it. It doesn't matter that Envoy Allen's the defending champion. That's what they'll do. In my humble opinion. But I will eat humble pie if I'm wrong about that. Apologize to you profusely.
I just think they're the one owner that you really very, very rarely see them having 2 runners in a race at Cheltenham. Like, they tend to split them up, and whether it's Willie Mullins or not, that's sort of, I don't know anything about the people. I don't know them. I don't know the trainers involved other than Henry, but they seem to get their way more often than not. And if you've only got Allaho fit, if Allaho hoses up next time out, you think we might not have him again, would it not be tempting? Would it not be tempting to say, let's just send him for a Gold Cup?
Yeah, but again, you're right, it would be. But wouldn't it be tempting to go for a King George this season?
I think
game just got beaten.
It would, yeah. They're
not talking about it. He's still entered in the race. Yeah. He's entered in it. A Plutard, I don't think is. And Envoy Allen definitely isn't, because there was a period there where I was very interested in Envoy Allen for the King George this season. He's not in it, and he's going for the Savills. Actually, that Savills chase is now turning out to be a really interesting renewal. We'll talk more about that before the end of the show. But I just checked the anti-post betting here, and I haven't done this in over a week. It's no surprise to see Stage Star 4-1. Doesn't appeal to me. If it's the day before the race, I'd be all over Stage Star at 4-1. If Allaho just does what he did the other day in the Kinloch Bray and doesn't explode everything to pieces, then I'd be with the younger horse. Envoy Allen is 14-1. lads, this is insane. Like,
Yeah,
there's
but you
no
can't trust
value
him.
anymore.
You can't.
We've gone through this in length on this podcast, and I'll defend him to the end of time, but I think you can trust him. I really don't get where the whole thing comes from. I don't think he's run that many bad races, has he?
No, he hasn't, but there is obviously a
He's
small
got
hole in him.
I'd say he's been difficult in the past. Like when he won at Down Royal last year, you can't hit the front on him miles out. He can hang and things like that, but there's no doubting his class. He's an 8-time Grade 1 winner.
Oh, there is.
I thought he was brilliant at Down Royal the other day, and he's just run into a freak of a horse.
Best ride in the race.
But he is nowhere near what he was in his novice hurdle and bump. Like, he's not even anywhere near to that where he was then. Like, there's no doubt about it.
He recorded a career high RPR last time out.
Yeah, but then look what happened last year. He won at Down Royal and then ran an absolute stink in the King George.
I think that's again the Drumhead team were just not. They weren't firing last year,
and a lot of horses in that King George didn't perform. A lot of horses didn't.
Yeah, that's true as well.
There was a lot of talk about Low Sun and that as well, wasn't there?
Oh, that's such a
pesky Low Sun.
My goodness, what
like,
was not.
Like, I love the horse. He's one of my favorite horses, but I just don't think we thought that he was the best thing that ever walked the planet when he was in Gordon's. Like, he was held in such high regard. Yeah. So that's
thought
what
he was
I
a Gold Cup
used
horse in
to
the
see.
making, didn't he?
Yeah, that's what I've been used to seeing him when, like, he was like invincible, and then I see him run now, and I just don't put him where I used to put him.
But I think that's the important distinction to make. Is he was once a horse with great potential. He's not worse now than he was then. He's got less potential now than he was then because he's found his level. There's no doubt he's running better now, winning Grade 1s than when he was winning novice hurdles. He's a better horse now because he's older and he's stronger. But I see, like, that's where I think a lot of the discontent with Envoy Allen comes from, is that he was thought of as the next Arkle, and he's not. Like, and I still think he's a wonderful horse. God, you bite someone's hand off if you said you could pay 300 grand and have an 8-time Grade 1 winner if you had the 300 grand to spend, obviously. But I think he's been a wonderful horse. He's just not lived up to the pedestal he was put on.
Yeah, I think when he was with Gordon, you were probably thinking this is a 170 plus horse, and he's just never...
he was a Gold Cup horse. Like, we thought that was it.
Yeah,
he was going to win a Gold Cup.
Which, then he's handed to another trainer, and that trainer has to get him into his system and his regime and how he looks after him. And for whatever reason, he decided, well, let's go the 2-mile route with him. Whereas Gordon would have always been going out in trip. Yeah. So he would have been going for the Gold Cup. Whereas they decided, with whatever it was they were seeing in him, maybe it was because they had a Plutarch. Maybe that was part of the reason that they decided to go down the speed route.
Part of it, because I've gone full like roundabout on Envoy Allen. Like when he was a young horse, I was always trying to get him beat because he was the horse that everyone loved. But I always had the theory on him that he's by Mahathir, and I just don't think they're at their best at 3 miles because they can be a bit keen, they can be a bit strong. There's a lot of speed horses by Mahathir, and I always thought of him as more of an intermediate trip horse, even back then when I wasn't the biggest fan of him. Now, actually, it's the more that everyone else has piled onto him about being a disappointment, the more I've sort of ended up in his corner. And winning the Ryanair for me last year didn't do too much. You sound just a contrarian by nature, maybe, but...
Basically, what you're saying is you just want to go completely against the crowd.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, you all love him? Well, I hate him. Oh, you all dislike him? I love him. He's brilliant.
It worked out for me at the Ryanair.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and everybody on this show, I think it was Paul Jacobs, Mark Milligan, and I, we were all over him for the Ryanair. So it worked out well for us. I think that 14-1 is embarrassingly big, and it's clearly the race he's going to go for. So in a world where anti-post betting is dead and there's no value anymore, that's value in my mind.
And you'll get 3 places if you back him anti-post, whereas on the day you may not. it can really cut up the Ryanair, can't it?
Yeah, that could be a 7-runner race for sure.